Okay, before you reassemble the clutch on a Bandit, you have to soak all the friction plates that you bought in a bath of oil for an hour or two minimum, although a lot of people in other videos recommend a day. And I use a nice big 2-pound or so coffee tin because it's big enough and because it's made of metal and it won't interact with the oil. So leave them in there for a while, get them ready to go. Okay, it's reassembly time for the clutch. As you can see, I've left the side cover on, sitting there just to keep the dust out. So let's get at that and lift it off for starters. And here's a crucial step in the reassembly. If you don't be sure this is okay, you can wreck your engine. Notice that the clutch basket gear on the left is not down all the way to fully mesh with the crankshaft gear in pink, sort of pink painted with this lousy light on the right. If you reassemble the clutch and torque down the clutch hub nut now, you'll wreck the engine. So this is not seating because on the back of the clutch basket there are 5 pins that have to seat on the oil pump gear, and right now they're not seating. So to get this to seat all the way, you're going to have to reach behind the clutch basket to where the oil pump gear is and move it gently so those pins align, and then you can push it down all the way in place. Now let's have a closer look with this crummy light again. I think you can probably see that the two are completely flush with one another. Absolutely crucial. Okay, let's get putting the plates in. The first plate in is a friction plate, and it's different than any of the others. There are 9 others. This one's unique. It's a larger internal diameter. So start with it. The plates, by the way, don't fit in any orientation. To get the slots to line up, you got to turn it to the right position and then push it in. Okay, we've got the first one of those in. Now we take a steel and push it in. Try not to push the basket out so the gears disengage. That would be a pain. Okay. Now, one of the regular friction plates, quantity 9 in total. Let's see here. There we go. A little bit of rotation required. And another steel. And I won't show you the rest of them, but keep on going. The steels number 5 and 6 in the shop manual are 2 that are different than the others. They're thicker at 2 millimeters thick rather than the remainder at 1.6 millimeters. The manual doesn't say if the position has to be 5 and 6 respectively, ordered from the inside out, by the way, but what the heck, that's the way the picture shows it in the manual, so that's the way I'll do it. Okay, all 10 friction plates and 9 steels are in place. Notice we started with a friction plate, ended with a friction plate, the innermost one being the special one of larger internal diameter. So now the whole stack is in place, and you should check at this point. Notice that the friction plate, final one, is all the way on, not protruding off in any way. It should be like that, nicely engaged with a little bit of tooth showing. If it isn't, you might have lined up the stack wrong, such as putting in the special plate not first but somewhere else. So check that before you go any farther. Okay, now it's time to put on the pressure plate. Don't forget the little steel spring seat has to be there. I think you can see it. So we'll fit that and turn it. There, it dropped in place. There are grooves in it to let it drop in. Then we have 2 new clutch springs that are going to go in. And we have to put in the clutch spring holder. It has 3 holes in it to take the small mounting screws. These little wee mounting screws are expensive and very easily stripped, so use your best screwdriver and do not use very much torque. You also really don't need to use any Loctite in them because they are going to be covered by a lock washer very shortly that would stop them from ever coming out anyways. I'll gently spin that guy in. Okay, and I won't show the other two, but there you go. Okay, the next step is to put on the lock washer. This is domed. Make sure the dome is outward. Slide that little guy down. And finally, the big clutch hub nut with this flange facing outward, because you are going to have to use a punch to seat it, and that little flange is what you're going to need to hit. Good. And now we'll have to torque it to the proper setting. 108 foot-pounds. You might even have to block the rear wheel, possibly, but I'm not sure. Anyway, torque it down to the right setting. And finally, we need to set the clutch hub nut with a center punch, because if the clutch hub nut comes loose, your clutch is going to slip, and that just won't do. Next steps: if you took the clutch push rod out from inside the countershaft when disassembling, put it back in now. Next step, the clutch push piece, the thrust bearing, the thrust washer, and the pressure plate lifter, which quite often has to be snuck in as it's a little bit tight, and the circlips and inner circlip removal tool, which is going to take a while, so I won't show this on video, but you see what I mean. So here's the finished reassembly. Before putting the side cover on, I'll have a look at the gasket. It's a little bit torn, although right at the mating surfaces itself it looks like it ought to hold, so I'll try it. If it doesn't work, I've got one to put in. At this point, you probably should squeeze the clutch and watch it work. If it looks and feels proper, you've done it right. And that's it. Final step, side cover. And remember that the 9 screws that hold it on are not all the same. Look at the disassembly video to see which is which. That's it for replacing the clutch on a 1997 Suzuki Bandit 1200. Okay, final credits. Huge thanks go out to Gordy McMartin up in Kelowna, Canada's best motorcycle mechanic, and Chris Roger in South Burnaby, Canada's best truck mechanic. As you can see, I have amazing connections. Also to Eric Jenny in Burnaby and Bruce Dirksen in Prince George, shade tree mechanics of a far higher caliber than myself. And finally to our old friend Brian Murray, who died in 2008 and was always around whenever something needed wrenching on. Thanks very much, everyone.